Willie's an old professional from what I found out on the radio. I didn't know this until we talked. That Willie was actually syndicated at one time
Yeah.
with it was Christian Recovery on Clear Channel, right?
Yeah.
And then and then Clear Channel had Howard Stern, right? So they had all their bases covered. They were bringing you your Howard Stern and your Christian Recovery.
Yeah, it was pretty much kind of what they got a menagerie.
Yeah, get what you want.
Yeah.
Right? This podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sorensen's Ace Hardware, located at 402 Washington Avenue in Los Banos, proudly serving the community since 1947. Please check out our friend at Sorensen's for all your hardware needs. Come on, guys, support those who support us. Thanks, Sorensen's.
Not so anonymous with a... No, I can't do it. Not so anonymous with EJ Areca.
We're here with Willie K, man, and first of all, I appreciate you and your recovery, right? When I was new into this thing, I would go to these meetings and I would see all kinds of faces, and I'd hear all kinds of words, right? And your words always held a lot of weight, right? And so for me in my journey, even though you didn't know that you were pouring into me at that time, you definitely left a long-lasting effect, right? Not only what I wanted my recovery to look like, but how I wanted to chase that recovery. So I have an overwhelming sense of gratitude for who you are, right? And ever since then, I've had your phone number, and I call you, and you pick up, right? You've come and chaired meetings for me. I remember going to, I had this commitment where I was sitting on this board of mental health, and I didn't know how to act, right? And I called you, and you gave me good advice. You told me sit there and shut up and listen till you know what you're talking about, so that way your words will actually have some weight, right? And so when it came to thinking of people to have on this podcast, I said, man, I got to get Willie on here eventually. So I'm grateful for you opening up your home for us and doing this.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So what's going on with Willie today, right? What does Willie's life look like today? What does recovery look like for Willie? What's up?
You know what? What is recovery? And it says it's an active change in ideas and attitude, right? And so, and what it dictates is that I need what they call a personal personality change, and what I need to do to change my personality is my personal reality.
Right.
And that's how I change that. So my reality has to change. What is my reality today? It's family, it's loved ones. It's security, long-lasting security, long-lasting recovery. Solid recovery, staying abstinent from anything that's a mood-altering, mind-changing substance, even fine cigars.
Right.
Because they seem to have their way with me too. But the fact of it is I love the refined parts and the finer parts of life. I enjoy it. And then God has given me the opportunity to do a lot of things that I never expected to do.
Right.
And so my recovery today is pretty large. I've got a lot of men that are in recovery. There's a big difference in trying to abstain from different substances or whatever the case is, because I believe life is a substance as well. Money is a substance. Whatever it is that controls my behavior, it can be construed to be a substance. So I'm very much in tune with a God of my understanding, a God that actually gives me the power. I think there's some literature that says that He's our greatest source of strength and courage, and so it gives me a lot of. So in the step process with recovery, it talks about that we found that we were powerless and that our lives at some point had become unmanageable.
Right.
But it says and unmanageable, right? Well, what happens is, and you'll probably hear me mention the God of my understanding quite a bit, because that's the relationship that I've had that's given me the ability to be as steadfast and as focused as I need to be on my recovery so that I can stay clean. Right. It's been 30 years, October 23rd, 1992. And this past October was 30 years. And so I went from being powerless to being powerful because I get to the step 11 in recovery. And the step 11 says we pray only for the knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry it out.
Sorensen's also has a Modesto location located at 1433 Coffee Road. Modesto, true value for all your hardware needs. For all of our people out in the Modesto area, please support those who support us. Thank you.
So I went from being powerless to being powerful. And that's some of the stuff that you was talking about earlier that, you called me about a situation where you've actually been taking a leadership role in open society. Right. And our literature tells us that one day our opinion would be valued outside of recovery or outside of a program or a fellowship or whatever, or a 12-step program, and being needed outside of that. My ideas and my attitude makes people feel that I might, man, you might have something to contribute. Right. And so that's where I'm at. Just in a place where I want to make a change. I've been just, God's been doing that. He's put me in the presence of movers and shakers so that I could actually be able to help other people through that process. So,
and
was that short enough or long enough?
Hey, that's perfect. Hey, and I always I typically ask people what their clean date is to start, but you said your clean date is October 23rd, 1982.
92.
92.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 1982 because I was born on October 23rd.
I've been clean almost longer than you've been alive.
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Right.
Okay. That's okay.
Your clean date is my birth date.
Okay.
Which is cool.
Right.
And so, what does that clean date mean to you, Willie?
Success. Yeah. It means I've been able to do something.
Right.
No matter what I went through or what I did in the past, if I don't have anything else, I've got that 30 years.
Right.
I've been sustained. And we were talking about it yesterday, and we're going through the process, and someone was mentioning, the desire to use and when it might have been lifted. I don't know when, I'm just glad. Right? 30 years ago, somewhere along the line, it was lifted. And boy, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad because I hear people talk about having a bad day. Oh, I had a bad day today. I said, no. Any day on this side of this situation is a good day.
Right.
A bad day is when I was out there and couldn't get any more, when it talks about finding ways and means to get more and not being able to.
Right.
Having to, just kind of contribute myself to ways of life that are demeaning, degrading, and being all right with it.
And being okay with it.
Yeah. Being all right with it, because I need to get what I need to get, and I need it now. And whatever I need to do to get it,
it's going to be done.
Yeah.
Well, and so, people, especially the people that are unengaged that may be watching this or listening to this, they're looking at you. And I haven't shaved recently, so they might look at me and be like, oh, this guy might have been an addict, right? But you look clean. So somebody watching this, they're like, man, this guy doesn't know what it's like, right? This guy has no idea what I'm going through.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So, we always like to go back a little bit. I know where we hang out, we don't glorify the past. We don't tell drug-a-logs and do all this stuff. But for the unengaged, I feel like it's always important to kind of qualify ourselves a little bit, right? Why should they be listening to us, right? So, what did, you can go back as far as you want, because I know as we unpack things, it's typically the traumas in life that lead us to make, feeling like drugs are the solution to our problems.
Yeah, yeah.
So, what early life, look like for Willie?
Well, where do I start? Okay, so let's just say I have a father, and I just finished mentioning him to you that he was 70 years old when I was born. My mom was in her late 40s, and I was kind of like the apple of his eye. My father had never had a child before. I was the only son that he's ever had, and God blessed him with me. I don't know if you want to call it a blessing or not, but he ended up with me, right? And so he really spoiled me. right? And he was a minister. He always was carrying the message to people of the Word of God, and he raised me the same way, right? But there was kind of a kicker that came along with it, is that it was a little bit overly emphasized, religion,
Right.
or whatever you want to call it, or Christianity. At the time, I didn't know it was Christianity. I thought it was just religion, and so he was adamant about that, because my father had a limited ability, a limited past, because of the simple fact that he came from the late 1900s. 1800s. 1891 is when he was born, and so when he actually, and I talk a lot about my dad because it closely associates itself with where I'm coming from, or where I'm starting, and he was in an era of time where he actually had a good job. He was able to take care of his family. My mother had married him, and she was, she had some shortcomings of her own, but my father was always understanding of that.
Right.
There were times when I actually had realized that he was the kind of man that I wanted to be, but I didn't know that until after I got in recovery, because I thought him being as docile as he was, and he allowed a lot of things to happen in his life, I thought he was kind of weak, but found out that he was strong, right? But I grew up in that atmosphere of that overly applied religion thing, hoping that one day I could get out of it, wishing that I didn't have to go through all that, which hindsight says I was kind of, misguided in my own head.
Right.
And basically, I saw a lot of hypocrisy. A lot of hypocrisy was in the religious or the Christian aspect of looking at things. There was a lot of do as I say and not as I do.
Right.
And so not necessarily always in my home, but in the grand scope of things. Going to church, going to whatever the case may be, being a part of the choir or whatever, and people living alternate lifestyles in an atmosphere that says you don't live an alternate lifestyle, and all this kind of stuff, and and it being widespread, and at a time in age where it's don't ask, don't tell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was hypocrisy as well, because the Word of God says one thing, and then the people live a certain way, and then it's okay. Let's just join into this melting pot of insanity, and we're gonna all live together and be happy, right? And so I come from that. So there's a lot of hypocrisy. So okay, but the good part is, okay, my mother and my father insisted on, let me just put a dark light on this thing. But my mother and father insisted on a good education. So I ended up going to private school my entire life. I went to public school up until about maybe 4th grade. My mother found out I couldn't read the newspaper. And she took me out of public school and put me in private school. And from that point on, it was on and cracking. And I think it was 3rd grade. But and I ended up in St. Peter's, Prince of the Apostles. I was the only black Baptist altar boy that ever lived. And so I was at a school called St. Peter's, Prince of the Apostles. And I ended up, and so this is the bright side, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a dark side and a bright side to everything. And so I ended up, the nuns found out I could sing a little bit. And Sister Mary John and Helen came to me, and she says, "Willie, we want you to sing Ave Maria." And I'm a Baptist,
That's a Catholic thing, right?
It's a Catholic thing, right?
Right.
So Ave Maria was a Christmas song, and they taught me to sing it in Latin. Right, Ave Maria, and so I was singing it one day at my church, and they were about to excommunicate me because they said I'd become a Catholic and I wasn't a Baptist no more. So here I am with another part of hypocrisy. Okay, so if you go over here to this other church and you participate in this because this is where you go to school, then you're not accepted here either.
Well, that's got to put a lot of confusion in a young kid's mind.
You
right?
think?
Your dad being a Baptist preacher,
Mm-hmm.
and then sending you to Catholic school,
Mm-hmm.
where you're already poking holes in this religion. Now you're in this mix. So
Right.
I mean, like, what does that do to a young kid's mind state? Does that make you rebel more, or is it just kind of like?
It's most confusing than anything
Yeah.
else.
Right.
So let's just say this. So when it comes to personality traits, whatever I needed to do to get drugs or alcohol or whatever I needed to get to make me feel different than I felt at that particular time, I do whatever I needed to do. It's kind of like they call it being a chameleon, right? And I change colors, whatever, or change nationalities, whatever. Yo, bro, hey, vato, orale, whatever. Or I say, hey, what's up, bro? How you doing, man? I say, Jolly G Willikers, that's gross, guy. Some kind of crap like that, And so that's what I ended up doing was transferring personalities. I'd go to the private school because I'm on the north side of San Antonio, Texas, and I'd say, Jolly G Willikers, man, that's gross, and then I go back home, and because I'm living on the east side of San Antonio, and I'm saying, yo, what's up, bro? What's up, man? What's up? And then when I get with the Vatos, I got to change. So I'm like, okay, because I'm living in San Antonio. San Antonio is like 57% Hispanic, so of course you're going to grow up with a lot of Hispanic kids. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But what do I do when it comes to my identification?
Right. So you're losing track of Willie.
Now I'm a Baptist, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Mexican, I'm a black, and I'm a white, and you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what do? So now I have to do something to quiet all of those different people in my mind. It's kind of like being a Sybil. I don't know if you know what Sybil is. Sybil was a woman that had multiple personalities. And so I end up with multiple. Well, some of those voices have to be shut down. So what do? I drink.
Right.
Or I use. Just to shut those voices down. No, is it my parents' fault or is it? No, it's just the way things went down. Right. But as time goes on, life is still evolving, and I'm still developing because I end up being, a part of a society of people that presented you. It's kind of like a quinceañera or whatever you want to call it. It was the debonair's ball and the debutante's ball and all this kind of stuff. And my sister's a Delta Sigma Thea. She's in the fraternity, women's sorority and things of that sort. And so we're going to college and all this kind of stuff. Consequently, I get kicked out of college. But anyway, that's another story. Anyway, but the fact of it is that all these things are evolving. We're still living this, quote unquote, this American dream thing.
Yeah.
But yet there's a nightmare behind the wall, right? And the molestation, all kinds of stuff like that I went through, not with my family, but with people outside of the family. Which is uncharacteristic of places that it might have occurred or whatever. So, and you say, how do you talk about stuff like that? And it's because of my recovery process. Right. I've overcome a lot of the feelings and the emotions that come along with that. Okay, so you said, well, how would somebody else benefit from this? So I hope that would benefit someone to be able to hear me speak that out publicly.
Right.
And say, this is what happened to me, but this is where I am today.
Yes.
Right. You're in my home, man. You know, and on top of that, I'm a veteran, right? I'm a veteran. United States Navy, right? I'm excited about that because even though I actually I was put on scholastic probation when it came to going to college, and then one day some friends of mine come to me and say, "Hey, man, let's go in the Navy. Let's go in the military." I'm like, "Okay, right?" Right? And so we go buddy, right? But it was the best thing ever happened to me. But we get to ASVAB, which is the place where you take the test and everything, to go into the military. We take the test. Well, Tim, my buddy, he doesn't pass the test. And then the other guy tells him he had been smoking marijuana for a period of time, so they put him on waivers. And so I'm in the other room swearing in, dude. I come out the room, and I say, "Hey, man, what's going on?" They say, "We're going home." Going home? I said, "Well, I'm going too." And this MP, this military policeman, pulls me over and says, "Hey, boy, where you going?" He said, "You property of the United States government now." I end up in San Diego, California. I'm talking about a country bumpkin out of San Antonio, Texas. I end up in San Diego in a line somewhere, taking a whole bunch of shots, getting yelled at and screamed at, and I'm like, I want to go home. But I ended up being in the military for some years after that, and enjoying it, traveling all over the world. So how does all that from the past coincide with today? There was a plan for my life the whole time.
Right.
How you gonna come to Earth from a 70-year-old man and there not be a purpose for your life? You're part of that purpose.
Right.
We're sitting here today because God put me here today with you today.
Right.
That's predestined.
Yeah, if it wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't
It
happen.
wasn't going to happen, man. Everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Right. I went through all that with the molestation. I went through all of that with behavior, the despicable behavior that I displayed out in those streets when I was doing drugs and when I was drinking and when I was partying, because I was able to hold jobs. I mean, most people weren't. I was like, I had friends of mine that would actually tell me, man, you got a problem. And I'm like, no, I ain't got no problem. I'm just fine. Come on, let's go sell a car. We'll just be fine. Don't worry about it. We'll sell another car. Sell another car. And I had a boss that could, he contributed to that. And Roland used to tell me that I show up at work on Saturday at 10:30, and I'm supposed to be in there at 8. And he said, man, just go sell a car or whatever. And the car that I left in, I'm not in it. It comes up on a tow truck or whatever because I've torn it up or something. And he would contribute to my delinquency. But he loved me, and I had this. There was something about me that people would fall in love with.
Right.
But I'd always make them fall out of love with me. That same something is still here today. That's what recovery has brought me to.
Right.
Is that part of me that attracts other people.
Yeah, because through the process, you get to find your shortcomings or your character defects.
All that.
But then you also find your character assets, right? And then you get to filter through that, decide what stays, decide what goes, right?
Well, my character defects become character assets.
Right.
See, what is my character defects? My thinking. Because there's a shortcoming that comes after that. So there's character defects and there's shortcomings, right? Character defects, my thinking. Shortcomings when I act out on my thinking.
Right.
It even talks about how recovery is an active change in ideas and attitude, but it also says that the drugs, my behavior, is not what makes me a recovering addict. It's my reaction to the drug that makes me a recovering addict or not, right?
Yes.
So it's my reaction to what you say, do, or how I feel that tells you if I'm in recovery or not. Right? So when someone actually says something or does something that may be offending to me or may not sound so good, however I react to that tells you how much recovery I have.
Right.
Right.
Like my off-color joke when we were on the phone the other day. I was telling my partner, I was like, I was talking to Willie and we were kind of joking around, and I said something, and he said, "That's not funny." And I'm like, "Oh boy." I'm like, here we go. So like going back to your story, so you end up in the Navy, you end up in San Diego, and by all means, life probably is still pretty manageable, right? Mm-hmm. So like, where does that point come to where
everything got out of hand?
Everything got out of hand, right?
So it was a gradual thing. So in the military, especially in the Navy, it's okay to drink. You know, you can get drunk as you want.
A lot of people get a college education and drinking in the military.
What they say, drunk like a sailor.
Yes.
Or cuss like a sailor, right? Those two things go together. They're kind of synonymous with being in the Navy. And so we're brawlers. We fight wherever we go. We get into a port. It's just it's that normal, stereotypical stuff. But so a lot of it's true, right?
Yeah.
So we drank a lot. So I ended up drinking too much in the military, and they sent me to a kind of a program that was going to gear towards is more of a medical aspect of gearing me towards away from alcohol or whatever so much. But I never ever saw New Year's, man. I'd always sleep through it. I have friends of mine that could testify to that. For some of my buddies, we do it. We have a reunion now, 40 years later, from guys that I was with, stationed with in Guam, and so my roommate, Jeffrey, he's always telling me how drunk I was all the time. But anyway, and so, but we'd go to port, we'd go to Philippines, we'd go to Japan, we'd go wherever, and we'd drink and we party. That's just what we did. It was okay then. And every now and then we'd find some marijuana or whatever. We'd smoke some of that, and the Philippines or whatever, or Hawaii where we were there. They called it Maui Waui in Hawaii, whatever. I know the names of it all, but I'm not going to do that anyway. I'm a connoisseur. But anyway, I found myself in trouble in the military for drinking too much.
Right.
And there was some consequences that went along with it. There was nothing like, getting kicked out or anything. So I went through all that, and it got to the point where it was suggested that I get out the military. So I got out after some years, about 6-7 years I was in there. And I actually got an honorable discharge. I left there. But when I got home, there was something they would call it freebase. It wasn't necessarily this crack thing. It was kind of a more high class, whatever, way to crash and burn.
Right. Right.
So let's crash and burn from up here rather than from down here.
Right.
You know, and so that's kind of typically what happened. I went to a friend's house one day. I guess you'd say friend. I engaged, and from then on, about 10, 12 years later, I kind of resurfaced because I went in, and it took some years for me to come out.
Yeah.
And whatever happened in between that first hit and that last one was not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It started out that way, but it didn't end up that way. It ended up like a nightmare. Yeah. And I lived that nightmare for anywhere between 9 and 10 years, I should say, to be more accurate. From 1986 to 1992.
And when you're in that process, right, in those years, at any point in time, was your mind thinking like, man, I really got a problem. I wish I could stop. Or was it just
Have
off?
you lost your mind?
Yeah. Well, for the unengaged.
How would you think that when you think I'm having so much fun?
Right.
Killing myself. I like dying.
Right.
Please kill me. Give me the next hit of dope so that it can stop my heart.
Right.
Because it did. There was a time when my heart stopped. I had convulsions. I fell out. My girlfriend was a nurse, and she says, you just died, right? Wow. That was a good one.
Yeah, right.
Let me get another one of those.
Well, and that's the insanity that like I think especially the unengaged, right? People that are in the recovery process understand what we were doing in that phase, right? And the mindset is just full go.
Full blown.
But even though like a lot of people that do pay attention to this podcast, like they don't understand that maybe they have a family member that's suffering in this disease and they can't understand why doesn't he just stop? Because from the outside, people can see it. But when you're in the mix, you just it's full speed. It's only an intervention, from God or higher power, however you want to put it, that's going to stop us in our tracks, So it never at a point was it like, man, I got to stop this. It was just go, go, go till the end, huh?
Yeah, it was. I didn't realize that until what they call the bitter end.
Right.
Because I had been in and out of jails and in and out of situations. Thank God, never really doing any serious hard time, whatever that might be. But I did experience a lot of things. The thing of it was that nobody could diagnose me. It's kind of like it says in this 12-step program that I have to participate in my own diagnosis.
Right.
Doctors can't, they don't understand the situation. Psychiatrists, they don't know. They think they know what's going on, but they have no idea. It's kind of like people who go into clinical studies and stuff, but they don't have any practical application. They don't know what it's like to be out there. So you're going to try to explain to me, and it just doesn't work that way. And so my experience with that was, people told me something was wrong. Friends of mine said, man, something's wrong. You're losing weight, man. You're not eating. You're up all night long. Up for days. Not just hours. You eat half a bag of potato chips and you're full. You don't have any money, but you're always begging for money, begging for this, scamming for this, manipulating for this, manipulating for that, manipulating family. But not realizing that something's wrong, man.
Right.
This seems to be normal, right? Because it became a normal thing for me to be this whatever, however other people saw me. I had friends of mine that I went to church with, and they'd see me. I'm on the corner. I'm hanging out with people, these despicable people. Wait a minute. They're not despicable. We are despicable.
Right.
Right? I can't, the adage that says, I saw people doing things that I never thought I would do, and only to find myself doing those very things, if not worse.
Right.
Right? So why would somebody think, you know what, I got a problem? Well, the minute you think you got a problem, you probably do.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, like, what was the pivot point for Willie? Like, where did the shift come? Was it like an intervention from the law? Was it?
It was Old Milwaukee.
Oh, what? The beer.
The beer.
Right.
Old Milwaukee. I'm walking around one night and I've got nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I've got this one little cassette player. It's you're too young to know what it was like. It had one speaker. It was about this little box. And I'm trying to sell it. And nobody wants it. Right? And so finally I find this guy, say, hey man, give me $1 for this, and he gave me a couple of dollars. And I went and I got me a quart of Old Milwaukee beer. And I'm sitting on the corner and I'm drinking it, and all of a sudden it just hit me. I need some help. Right? Something's wrong. I don't have a family anymore. My family is like, they decided they didn't want to mess with me anymore. You know, I'm too much of a liability. But I had this one aunt, this I call her Derringer, 2-shot Derringer. You know, she gave me one shot, and she gave me one more because I called her and I said, hey, you know, and Virginia, I need some help. And consequently, she's out of all my aunts and uncles, my mother's side of the family, she's the only one still alive. She's in her 90s now, you know, but she came and got me. She said, you can't come stay at my house, but I'll get you some help, right? So she took me, you know, and that night is when I realized this has got to end. I didn't know that to that extent then. I just knew something had to change. I was just, the lifestyle had took its toll on me, you know, and I really believe that it was a little nudge from God.
Right.
It's time to come in, son. You know, you've been out here long enough. I remember a lady telling me one day, EJ, that God wasn't with me when I was out there in them streets. And that couldn't be more of a lie.
Right.
Because if he wasn't, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today.
He wouldn't be here today.
It was only God that put that idea in my head that it was time. Because if I had it my way, I'd still be there. But that night I came to myself, and it's kind of like, I don't know if you have any biblical powers, but it's kind of like there's a story of the prodigal son. But it talks about how he had went through all the stuff. He had spent all his money. He had went to all these, you know, however he spent the money, which was not a godly way. It says at some point he ended up working with a pig farmer, and he was considering eating some of the stuff that the pigs were eating. That's how bad it got. But it says somewhere along the line, he came to himself. Meaning he figured out, he says, wait a minute, even my father's servants eat better than this. Maybe he would let me be one of his servants because he had betrayed his father. There was a time when I actually felt, well, maybe something could change.
Right.
Maybe if I just, you know, do something different. And so it did. And things got better, and I got better, and here we are, right? But for someone who actually would ask, how could you possibly, this dude sitting here now, help me understand, is that I've been where you're at. Wherever you are right now, I've been there.
Right.
In the last 30 years, or let's say the 35 years, 5 years before, prior to pre-recovery.
Pre-recovery.
Right? Let's just say I've been there already. The literature talks about how other addicts know the places that other addict spirits have visited, and that's what it talks about. It's a spiritual program, not a religious program. So it's about my spirit that has been tainted, my spirit has been subdued, my spirit has been held down, and it's the Spirit of God that's in me. So it was trying, the disease, which is the devil,
right,
was trying to destroy the part of God that was in me, and I was volunteering for it to do that, right? But the power of God was much stronger than the power of the disease.
And in our literature also talks about, you know, the addict could be prayed over, beaten, right?
But counseled with all that.
But you're only ready when you're ready.
When I'm ready,
right? And an intervention from God, put this thought in your head to reach out for help, right? And I think that's the misconception is people think they can go out there and just sprinkle fairy dust on these addicts.
It ain't gonna happen.
And they're gonna get up and get clean. It had to come from you.
All they're gonna do is feed me and give me enough strength for another run.
Exactly.
That's all that is. You know, give me some food. Cool, let's eat. You know. Oh, hey, you got a little extra? It's kind of like Pookie on what is that? New Jack City, where he wanted the whole turkey. He didn't want the whole turkey to eat it. He wanted to eat some and then sell the rest, right? So let me have a turkey. Let me, you know.
Well, and that's it. You know, it's when anybody ever asks me, how can I help such person? I'm like, help them fall. Right? Unfortunately, that's all we could do.
Let them hit their bottom.
Let them hit their bottom.
Yeah, get out the way.
And bottom always has wiggle room.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of,
My family did that. Yeah.
What would that look like?
The last time I went to a county jail, and my aunt, Virginia, the same one that took me to the detox center to help me get clean, would always bail me out. She was the one that, she was the bailer. There was the feeder that kept me eating, which was my Aunt Eva, and then there was the bailer, and then there was the sustainer, which was my Aunt May. She was the one that let me stay at her house, even though I was out of my mind, but she'd always give me a place to sleep. And so the bailer decided not to bail that last time, and they just left me there, and it was a good idea.
Right.
Because that's when I realized something is wrong. It wasn't that prevalent in my mind at that time, because I got out, you know, and I still did some damage to myself, because I never can't blame that on anybody else. It was always me. I do know that the trait runs in the family for addictive personality, whatever it might be. Food or whatever, because most people need to know that it's just not about drugs. This thing is not about drugs. It's about the manifestation of things in my life that keeps me doing the same thing over and over again. I was 300 pounds at one time, you know, and 292 pounds as of three years ago. You know, I've lost 98 pounds, but I took away everything else, the drug and the alcohol, and replaced it with the food. Right. And I got this good cooking wife where she can burn, man, but she burns too well, you know. But anyway, it's because I know for a fact where it could take me. Look, 30 years clean, 30 years later, do you realize I could go right back?
Oh yeah. It's right out the door. Well, maybe not out your door today. You might have to drive a couple blocks.
Not this door. It's not this neighborhood.
You know ways and means.
But I know where to go. It's about 3 miles from here. But yeah not in this neighborhood. No.
You know, like my sponsor always says, you know, an addict like me, you could drop me off in any street corner with a lint in my pocket, and I'll figure out a way to get loaded.
Yeah.
Right?
One way or another.
And so, like, you explained the process of reaching out to your Aunt Virginia, right, for that help. Up until that point, had like 12-step recovery or anything like that been introduced to you in your life, or it was a foreign concept?
Well, no, in the Navy, in the Navy it had.
It had.
But that was so 83, 84, and so then when I actually found, that was 82, and then when I actually got to a 12-step program was 92. Right. So was that 10 years?
10 years.
Yeah.
And so from the time you reached out to help, your Aunt Virginia, to the time that you found recovery, like, what does that look like for you? How do you maintain abstinence, I guess you could say? I mean, like, what is
I was
that?
done. So I'm at my aunt takes me to a detox center there in San Antonio, and she actually goes in with me, and they're doing an interview in the back room with me, and she's up front. She's waiting for me in the lobby, in the waiting room, and so the guy's asking me these questions, whatever, and so consequently he recommends me to a in-treatment facility, patient facility, and it's a 90-day program, and I'm like, okay, yeah. Right, because all of a sudden the Novocaine of wanting to stop starts to wear off, right? And so I'm like, all right. I said, look at man. He said, well, you go in and check in today. They got a bed for you. I'm like, I got some business and some stuff that I need to wrap up
Of
before
course,
I go
right?
in, right? I ain't got nothing, man. I got lint in my pocket, right?
Right.
I got nobody wants to do anything with me. What? I got a bank account I need to close out or something?
Right.
I don't think so. But I ended up going home that night. But the power of God was so prevailing then. That next morning, my aunt came and got me, and I went to the treatment facility. I met this guy. I don't mind saying his name is Lynn Brown, and Lynn was my counselor for the duration. I was there 90 days, and then I didn't really want to leave, but I actually got there, and I stayed in their intensive program. Back then they did attack therapy or whatever you want to call it, and I stayed in that intensive program for 90 days, and then when everything, and so, but let's just say somewhere between the inception of this thing, when I first got there were people actually in this treatment facility still using. And so, but I had made up my mind. I wasn't doing that no more.
Right.
I was done. And I became the barrack snitch, right? Because I told everybody that was using. I made sure that the counselors there knew that they were putting my life in danger. So, and I didn't call it snitching anymore. I call it surviving.
Right. And I get it. I had a similar experience in the Salvation Army because it wasn't always clean in there.
Right.
When you're clearing trucks out with donations, people find things.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And one person could take out the whole dorm.
Right.
And I have a memory of a guy, and I was actually his mentor. And I talked to him. He went on ahead and did what he was gonna do. Right. And so I had no other choice. And the guy that brought me into treatment, he said, "You're gonna have to be a snitch. You're going to have to be a bitch." All these ideas that I had in my mind, what made me a man, I'm going to have to rewire everything, right? And I did it, and I stood up in the in-house 12-step meeting that night, and I said, "Hey, I'm trying to stay clean here. I'm the one that told on him. I'm the snitch, right? And I owned it. And that was one of the steps that helped me take my life back, right? And so it's funny how you say you're the in-house snitch, but that's not the truth. You're looking for a new way of life here.
Yeah, I'm surviving. I'm trying to survive this thing, man, because it was killing me. Right. Slowly committing suicide. Anyone that actually has gone through this. So let's just say prior to, so I know what it's like to be out there on the streets and can't find what I need. That's why I said earlier, a bad day is not a day that I've had today in the last 30 years. A bad day is when I'm out there in the streets and have nowhere to turn. Right. When I've got this monkey on my back and I can't get it off, that's a bad day.
Right. And anybody that hasn't been through that, they don't understand the levels of degradation that you're willing to put up with to get the next one.
No, they don't.
Right. And so freedom from that obsession is only God given.
Now, come on, man.
Right? Like you have to do the work.
You get me to shout
right?
up in here.
You have
Hallelujah.
Right? We got to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? Only God can
man.
take that away.
Yeah, man.
Right?
It takes him.
And it looks like from the point that you asked Aunt Virginia for help to the point where you were all in.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. I was done.
So what does early recovery look like for Willie? Because, I mean, we're in the first 90 days, right? Like what starts happening in your life? Are there noticeable shifts, or is it just being abstinent?
So I'm living down the street from a meeting place. It's a church. I can't remember the name of the church. It'll come to me in a minute. But I'm living with a girlfriend down the street. And it just happens to be one of the spots where I used to score dope that's in between where I live and the meeting place. Antioch Baptist Church is the name of it. And Antioch, it have a meeting there. So this old timer that's in there, and old timer, he had about 6-7 years, right? 7-8 years.
You got 90 days clean.
And I got 90 days clean. So
that's
he's
a
an old
long
timer
time.
to me, right?
Yeah.
So he says, "Look, man, we got this meeting here. There's not a lot of people coming, and I want you to be what they call here the secretary. Back there they call it the chairperson in Texas, but." And so he says, "You're going to have to come here. You make the coffee, you put out the readings and all this kind of stuff, and you get the meeting ready for people that's going to come." But my challenge is that I didn't have a car. So I'm walking from the house where I'm living, and I'm walking past the drug spot. It's kind of like a little ghetto area where you go up and you get your drugs and you leave, right? And I'm having to walk past there. every night that I go to this meeting, and some of the guys knew me, and they'd call my name, and the only thing I could do was just break out, start running, and I wouldn't stop till I got to the door of that church, because I was scared.
Right.
And it was just not, and eventually, I would get there, and so it was about maybe the 6th or 7th time that I wouldn't stop and come where they were. They stopped calling my name. Right. And I really believe that was part of not necessarily a test, but a challenge that God was putting before me to see if I really was going to participate in what He had given me, which was a need to be free from the active addiction of life. Not just the drugs, but active addiction of a bad relationship or whatever the case, because there are people who stay stuck. And I stayed stuck for a long time. Whatever your circumstance is, whatever your situation is, you're stuck in, there's something that I'm going to have God to deliver me from. Look, man, get me out of here, man. And I might even be having a formal prayer. Just help.
Yeah. Help. Yeah.
Help. This ain't right. Something's wrong. Eventually, I got to come to some realization something is wrong. Please, God, do something, man. If you say you there, if you say you a God, I need you to do something.
Right.
Right now. Not next week. Something's wrong, and I need you now. And He showed up in a magnificent way, as you can see, right?
Well, because we're experts at like rationalizing.
Oh yeah.
Why we're here. What's your process of realizing when you're stuck, right? Because sometimes we can be stuck and we can rationalize that everything's okay.
When I'm trying to rationalize and justify the most outrageous nonsense, right?
Right.
But eventually, the truth comes up, right?
And usually it hurts your feelings, right?
Man, come on. So most of the time, God speaks to me through people.
Right.
Right. Especially my sponsor, the man who my mentor. He mentors me, and he's a phenomenal man, and he has these real simple ways. So let's just say this. So I was stuck in a relationship, right, and that's how I got to California. I followed my character defect, which was my ex-wife, right. I was calling her, and the relationship, we had separated, and she was really angry at me about this or that or whatever. That's another story. But she would tell me in no uncertain terms that she would have nothing to do with me, period. And this is post active addiction. This is, I'm in recovery now.
Right.
And I think I got 2-3 years when we first got together. And so she's telling me that she'd prefer not to be with me. And so she moves to California. And I'm calling her, right? And I'm saying, hey, what you doing? Who you with? I got this obsessive compulsive stuff going on. You left me for somebody else. And she's like, would you leave me alone? You da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, oh, wow, you can't be talking to me like that. And so I get out the phone, right? And so I call my mentor, call my sponsor. I say, hey, man, this woman's talking to me real crazy. She's saying some real sick and crazy stuff to me, man. And I'm starting to hate her. He said, stop calling. What? He said, stop calling. I said, what do you mean stop calling, man? He says, no, unless you really want to continue to be abused, stop calling. Now, my obsessive and compulsive behavior is telling me, my thinking and my actions, my obsessive compulsive stuff is telling me, okay, man, I'm constantly thinking she's with somebody else. She's with somebody else. She's with somebody else. Well, she should be with somebody else because I wasn't worthy of being with her. I'm not living like I'm supposed to be living as a husband or as a man or a father or whatever the case may be. Because even though I'm in recovery, I'm still tripping.
Right.
I still haven't overcome the insanity part, that second step process where it says we ask God to restore us to sanity. I'm still doing stuff insanely stupid.
Right.
I'm still thinking that way.
So, how do you, because I know if I want to entertain a thought, right, it could become an obsession real quick.
Eventually. Yeah.
Right?
Immediately, I should say.
Exactly. And so how do you, because I know for me, like early on in recovery especially, like the actions were still very difficult, right? And I believe me and you are similar to where we were raised, and we knew right from wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you're making decisions that you know are wrong against your own free will, right? That's the obsessive compulsive nature of this disease that we suffer from. So how long did it take you to realize that little trick of silencing that little voice and stop entertaining that? Or do we still, at times, I'll entertain it, right? I will. I'm a victim to it, especially when it comes to shit with my kids. I'll start, why they were wronged, or I want to control their situation, and I'll start obsessing on shit, right? And then it'll become a compulsion. And then if I'm lucky, I'll make a phone call before I act out on some stupid shit.
Yeah.
Like telling off a school teacher or something because I thought they wronged me,
Yeah.
But like, what does that process look like for you then, and what does it look like for you now? Because it sounds like you suffered from it too.
Well, you know what? There was there was a period of time in there where, you say, okay, so I'm practicing my recovery. Okay. It's kind of like playing football for the first time, right? I'm practicing. I ain't very good at it in the beginning, right? I had to hone my skills or whatever, but it takes a while before I can become. And even in our literature, it says that we need to actually be looking at ourselves on a regular basis in a 4-step, in a 10-step, so that we can become proficient at actually knowing when our disease is apparently attacking us, right? So what is the disease? There's a God within me, but there's also this thing. Wherever good is, so is evil sometimes, right? And so there's this thing inside of me that talks to me on a regular basis. Well, the more I recover, the more I get to a point of where I realize that this thing is talking to me and I don't want to listen to it anymore, I take the step process, and so I have to take it on that particular area of my life. My sponsor is not an advocate of constantly looking at the past. Let's live in the here and now. What are you addicted to right now?
Right.
At 2 years clean or 3 years clean, money became an issue for me when I had about 2 or 3 years clean. My sponsor wouldn't allow me, because I sold cars at the time, and my sponsor wouldn't allow me to go back to the car business for quite a while. I had a couple of years clean, 2.5 years. And he said, okay, now I kept begging, can I go back? Can I go back? Because I knew where the money was, right? And so I actually got back there, and I got blessed. So I started making a large amount of money. And then I became a manager. I started making even more money, and have making multiple thousands of dollars every month, and that became my addiction. So I'm there 6 days a week, 9 hours, 10 hours a day. I'm doing 90-hour, weeks and stuff, because I'm a manager now, and I'm the car lot, and the car lot don't close till the last customer leaves, right? And so I'm the low man on the totem pole. So who you think's going to stay there till 2 o'clock in the morning?
Right.
Wow, And so, but that became my addiction, right? And I ended up doing that, and but after a period of time, God kind of moved me out of that vein. And I moved into some other stuff, and it just went from one extreme to the other. But at some point, I remember when I had become a service work junkie in the 12-step program, right? So now I went from I became the literature bank chair. We had they actually trusted me. I'm working with Terry and Terry W, and Terry actually gives me a job working with him as the vice chair of Literature Bank, which the Literature Bank in Texas had $5,000 bank account. There's a checkbook. There's 2 signatures that's necessary, one of the chair of the area and the Literature Bank chair, and I become the vice chair. So he teaches me how to count all the literature, and he teaches me how to do this, how to sell the literature or whatever, because they did back then, they would sell it at a certain profit value, and so money would be donated back to our area and all that kind of stuff, which makes more sense. But anyway, I did that, and so one day I became the chair. So now I'm in charge. I got a year and a half clean, and I'm in charge of $5,000, maybe 2 years clean, and I'm in charge of $5,000. Where the year after that, I become, like I said, the chair. They give me this checkbook, and they're trusting me with it, and I'm stuck on being trustworthy. So nothing's gonna happen to this money. And then they make me treasurer of the area. Now I'm in charge of hundreds of thousands. Oh, wait a minute. These people that lost their minds. Well, no, I have my mentor, my sponsor is telling me, look, this is how you do this, man. Because I'm in the process of learning this process. Well, the next thing you know, I'm the first African American chairperson. I'm vice chair, and then I become the chairperson of this particular Esperanza area in Texas, Bexar County, Texas. And so this process ends up being one that evolves into something else. So now I get to California because I'm like 7 years in now. I get to California now. I'm becoming on the board of directors here and the board of directors there, and and I'm working with a lot of young kids, or whatever, as their mentor. And but so there was a progression to where from that first 1 to 5 years, I'm practicing. Right. My sponsor says, okay, now once you get to 5, he says 5 you was pretending. He says the next 5 you got to start. He says you practice it. He says now when you get to 10. You got to start living it. So I had started living it somewhere between 4 and 10.
Right.
I had already started living it because of the simple fact that I had to. There were times when I got caught up in my thinking that could very well have jeopardized my freedom.
Right.
Even clean.
Well, and you talked about, I've heard you talk about, and I don't even know if you want to elaborate on this, but you've bumped your head clean.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to talk about that or
Well, it was some domestic stuff. So let's go back to the beginning when I told you that there was some behavior that went on between my mom and my dad. My dad was pretty much the docile one. My mom was pretty aggressive, and I wasn't particularly pleased with the aggressive part. And I'll leave the rest of that I allow them to maintain their anonymity because
right.
It's really no one's business. But you put whatever twist you want to put on it, And so as time went on, I've got the same attitude based on the fact that I don't want to be the docile one. I don't want to be the one that's easygoing because I don't want to feel the way that I thought it was making my father feel.
Right.
So now I'm the more aggressive one, right? And being aggressive in domestic situation landed me in jail with 4 years clean.
Right.
And the chair of the area.
and right. And that's a hole you don't want to dig.
Come on,
right?
man. Come on. And so, but there's a lesson and a blessing in everything that we go through. But
right.
but this was just a situation where I needed to know that even though I'm clean, I still have some areas in my life that are pretty much in the danger zone. Right. And that's one. And then the question you asked: how does someone see you here today as you are now, and really believe that you know then? Well, I think now that we've talked through some of it, they understand. God knows, yeah, he's been there. He's been there. So I ended up, going. Now this is the irony of it all. God has a way of letting you know, look, man, this is not what I want for you. So stop. Just the same with when I was in active addiction. He said, okay, this is not what I want for you, son. Stop. Well, I go to that jail clean, which is the worst thing in the world. I need to at least be hung over or something where I'm comatose or something, but it wasn't like that. And I was wide awake, fully apparently this is what's going on. Only to find out that God sent me there to take a message and to get one. So, and I've talked about this, where this guy had murdered his wife through some domestic stuff. It wasn't necessarily he did it deliberately. It was something he did accidentally. Okay, but you got a murder case, man. Yeah. Right. And so I meet this guy. He asked me to pray with him, and we're in a cell, and I'm praying with him. And I asked him what happened, and he says I accidentally killed my wife. Right. Now I'm being a perpetrator of domestic stuff. Told me, this could very well be you, dude. God's trying to show you something, right? So I leave there and I become a proponent rather than a perpetrator. I leave there. Ironically enough, God puts me. A friend of mine comes to me and says, "Hey, man, I want you to be on the board of directors for the Child Abuse Prevention Council." So here I am in an 8-step, 9-step process. Now I become a mandatory reporter of any kind of domestic stuff that goes on in the family. So I got to report on myself, right? So I watch God to do these things. So here we are evolving, right? From the evolvement. Okay, once again, my opinion is valued outside. So the experience that I've had in my active addiction, or even in the process of learning to be a better person, still holds a value in teaching someone else. Okay, so here we are. Now we're right back at what you said. How can someone believe that you know anything about this? Been there, man. Yeah. Done that. You know, I don't even say the old cliche, got a T-shirt. No. I've been there.
Right.
You see the tracks in my fears, right? It's I can laugh about it today, but it's funny now.
I think Shakespeare, what did he say? Tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, because it doesn't own you anymore.
No.
And I don't even know how to segue this in, but you said some interesting stuff before we even started recording, right? We were looking at family pictures, and you were talking about your dad's age, right?
Right.
And you talked about your dad being one generation removed from slavery.
Yeah.
Right? So what bearing does that have on you growing up into recovery? And what I have no idea. That's why I'm asking the question.
Right.
Like how does that mold you as a young man into your addiction and into your recovery? Because I think that's interesting. I've never, that's really close, right? Like a lot of people say, oh, that's a long time ago, but for you, that's only 2 generations.
Yeah, it was 1 generation, actually.
Right? And then so how do you let go of a lot of those things? A lot of people.
Well, you know what? Okay, so now I see where you're going with that. Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah. Well,
that's heavy.
Hey, come on, life. Man. See, now we're fixing to get into some area. Oh man. Okay. I
want to hear it.
Okay.
I want to learn.
But right? I don't know if a lot of people are ready to hear certain things, right? But the fact of it is that my father always taught me, even though this man is born in 1891, he taught me everyone should learn to live together. Now, this is an uneducated man. This man doesn't have a high school diploma or a college degree or anything like that. This is a man that came up under hard knocks.
Right. Well, education's relative, right? Like you don't have to go to school to become a
exactly.
Right?
And so, but he grew up in the late 1800s. There weren't a whole lot of black folks going to school or even had the ability to do so. There were some that became lawyers and whatever, doctors and attorneys or whatever, but they had the privilege of doing that. Everyone didn't have that, and my father was not one of those that had it. But he ended up working for Missouri Pacific Railroad and all that kind of stuff. Got a good retirement, all that. But to go back to what you were talking about, the evolvement, right, and realizing that my grandfather was a part of an era of slavery that is considered despicable,
right?
In all situations. Now we ain't gonna say in some or whatever. I don't know any good parts of it.
Right.
I haven't heard of any. But the fact of it is that my father always made me realize that no matter what the past has been, you still have to live, for the future. You better get a grip on yourself because there's not a whole lot you could do about the past. And then in some of my research, I found out that it really wasn't. Here we go. It really wasn't a nation or a nationality of people who are totally at fault for slavery. It wasn't like some kind of white dude was fast enough to run around Africa and catch a whole bunch of black people. Somebody had to walk them up to the boat.
Right.
They had to be able to trust somebody to go there. So who might that have been? So these were these African kings of these tribes that really sold their people into slavery. So what is your perspective from that? Where did you get that, Willie? Well, the fact of it is that biblically, anytime a nation of people sinned against God, they were delivered into exile. The Bible calls it slavery. It's called exile, but that's what it is. Even God's chosen people, the Israelites, were slaves for their sins against God constantly. Jews that say that Jesus Christ is not the Son of God, right? Okay, so fine. The Holocaust, 6 million Jews are killed in the Holocaust. So there's always some kind of retribution for those, and so we got people jumping brooms and practicing witchcraft and all kinds of stuff in Africa and all kinds of stuff like that. And the fact of it is that so here we are. Once again, I've got to face, the music. Whatever there were the Aztec warriors, anybody, any nation of people, even Japanese have slaves, or China had slaves, or whatever the case may be. Somebody has been in captivity. Even in Italy, the Moors invaded Italy, and then the Italians become slaves to them, or whatever. But there's always cause and effect. So I can't try to isolate this. Okay, 400 years. So what? It was 400 years. So maybe that's a cleansing process. Mine was 10 years.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? There was a cleansing process
Right.
that took place. Okay, so I'm just glad it wasn't 400 years. It was 10 years.
Right.
Right? I was able to survive it, and a nation of people have been able to survive that. But because of that, the stigma is that I need to feel sorry for me and my people. Oh, woe is me.
Right.
And that's a bunch of crap, man. I had one of the guys that I mentor, his sponsor, he came to me one day. He says, "You know what, Pops?" And I'm like, because everybody calls me Pops. You know, even though people older than me call me Pops. But he said, "Pops, you know what, man? The white man always keeping me down." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, man. You know how it is. White man always keeping us down." And I said, "What's his name?" And he said, "What?" I said, "What's the white dude's name?" I said, "Whoever he is holding you down, tell me what his name is, and we go beat him down right now. What's his name?" "I don't know his name." I said, "I know you don't, because he don't exist, dude." "What do you mean, Pops, he don't exist?" The only person holding you down is you, man. If the Bible, God says, if I be for you, how can anything come against you? That means that God bless me. It even talks about how the rain falls equally on the just and the unjust. The rain falls equally on those who don't even believe. Those that God knows that are denying him. He blesses them anyway. So how am I going to sit up here and say you done took something from me, or that you keeping me from something? No, the only person that's keeping Willie from this is Willie.
Right.
Because I got a God that blesses me. The only thing that kept me from being clean was me wanting to use. Men did listen to me. If I could party right now and take a drink, I would.
Right.
I like drinking cognac.
Yeah.
I like smoking a little weed. But if I smoke some weed, we ain't going to be sitting here, and you ain't going to have these mics. You ain't going to have these chairs ain't going to be here. My wife is going to be, everything must go sell. All I need is one. Just give me a Budweiser. It's on and cracking, dude.
Yeah.
It's over with. I'll smoke my grandson.
Shit.
I'll tell him, "I'm sorry, Diallo. I didn't mean to say that." Anyway.
So, and you explain that story, I understand why you embrace recovery so well, because your dad was teaching you acceptance and recovery before you ever found this process.
Even before that.
So you were exposed to recovery before you even knew it. Your dad was giving it to you.
Yeah, he was.
But on a generational level.
On a generational level. Yeah, gonna be worried about all that stuff, boy. We got to move on.
Yeah.
Be worried about all that. So I'm going to let active addiction plague me? Come on, man. It's time to move on.
Right. And so, so what is what does recovery look like for you today, Willie? Like what does it look like for you today?
Bliss.
Yeah.
That's what I tell you. I don't have any bad days, man. People be telling me, "Oh, man, it's been a bad day." No, I don't have a bad day. I don't struggle. I ain't got no issues. None of that, man, because I told you I have a first and 11-step process in my life. I'm powerless, but I become powerful.
Right.
And I know that the power that I have in my life comes from God, right? And I have a strong relationship with my God. And I continue to have that relationship, because now, what is your purpose in life? My purpose is to be there for people like you. People like the people that come to me and say, "Hey, Willie, would you sponsor me?" And would you mentor me? And I'm like, "Sure." Now there's requirements, because I don't play around. Because of the fact that this is what it's done for me. This is what it can do for you. But if you want to play games, then find someone that wants to play games, because I don't. My sponsor tells me all the time, I sponsor grown men, not little boys. And if you're not willing to become a big boy, then you need to go ahead and find somebody that wants to treat you like a little boy. Children can be children, but men need to be men. Now, is there a sensitive side? Well, you just saw part of mine.
Right.
Is there a little boy still inside that cries out for, for some love and for some? Yes, he's still there. But he has to be manifested in a way that God can manifest it. my recovery today is a beautiful home, beautiful wife, beautiful son, grandson, daughter-in-law, and I even my relationship with my family back in Texas is a bit skewed to a certain extent, because I think they still see the picture of me 30 years ago.
Right.
Even now, some people won't let you live things down fully. You still suspect. They still kind of leery of you or whatever. What is he doing really in California? And even though I've been here 22 years, and I ain't called for bail money yet.
Right. The bailer's off duty.
We said, can you bail me out? Those words don't come out my mouth. Matter of fact, I became a bail brother.
Oh, there you go.
I bail people out. This guy called me the other day. He said, man, I got $100,000. I said, you got $10,000? He said, no. I said, I'll see you later. Yeah, I got 3. Nah, I ain't gonna make it, bro. But anyway, you talking to the wrong person. You can't play me. Ain't no play here. So anyway, that's how you know I'm still me. That I'm one of y'all. You one of us. 'cause you ain't running no game on me. Anyway, let me come back. Come back, Willie. Compose yourself. You tripping. Anyway, so my life is full.
Right.
I'll say some of the things that's going on in my life now. I've actually done prison ministry for the last 10 years, and I've been working with a lot of guys in prison, which I go in. I was doing pre-release programs. I was doing church services there on Wednesdays and the Sundays. We got so big we were doing 3 services a Sunday because of myself and another minister, Trent Tillis, and Trent was actually such a loyal guy, and so I was. And I'll this is a quick story, but I'll tell this real quick. So I professed ministry right after I got out of the military. No, right after I got clean in '93. And I knew that I was a minister long before that. I knew that my father had kind of passed on the lineage or whatever, and so I professed ministry, but I didn't really get into ministry that much. I went to school. Matter of fact, my father in ministry in the church that I grew up in, they sent me to school. I got my degree in theology, and I did 4-year degree, and then I got out of there and I was ordained and licensed to actually preach the gospel and to have my own church. Well, I had a recovery home, like a building where we had a whole bunch of meetings there or whatever all the time, and then I left there and I came to California. This is like 2000. This is 2001, 2000, and when I got here, I was here for quite a while, but I wasn't practicing ministry. I wasn't practicing any kind of church faith or anything like that. Church participation. I did at one time, but then I found some more of that hypocrisy, and then but as of 10 years ago, I met this guy. He had been in Folsom Prison for 23 years, and he had started doing prison ministry. And so he kept bothering me. I was like, man, I don't want to go to no prison. And he says, man, come on, man, I need you to come go in here with me. And I'm like, no. He says, so he bothered me for about a year, but I knew because I had some priors that I probably wouldn't get, they wouldn't clear me to go in there. So I filled out the paperwork just to get him off my back. He comes back and says, hey, man, you've been cleared. And I'm like, nah, they're going to go in there. So he's doing church services on Wednesdays for guys who are in protective custody. And because they had these guys separated, of course, and so it's only about 5 or 6 guys in there, and so I go in there on Wednesdays, for an hour and a half, so, and I'm in there with him, and he says, "Hey man, you want to say something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, hey guys, how you doing? It's so nice to meet you." And so finally, the chaplain that's in charge of the church services there, he says, "Hey, you want to come to Sundays and do Sunday service for general population?" So he says yes. And he looks over at me and says, hey, you coming with us? I say, hey, man, I told you no, man, I'm here for moral support on Wednesdays, dude. I said, about no Sundays and none of that kind of stuff like that. So I'd actually do that. And so finally he bothers me another 6 months. And I'm like, So I said, all right, man. So I go on Sundays. I get there on Sundays. You want to say something? Yeah, I say something. Hey, what's up, dude? What's happening? Hope y'all be able to get out of here pretty soon. right now, I'm going home. The lady said, what's most rewarding about going to the prison? I said, leaving. That's what's rewarding. So when I get ready, right? So, but yeah. So anyway, let me get back to my story. So anyway, he actually, and just to fast forward this thing. So he's there. I'm working with him. I start going on every Sunday. I start going every Wednesday with him. And eventually something happens. I think the warden from prison where he was transfers to this prison. They pull his clearance. He can't come in anymore. So it's just me. And so he's got 3 or 4 other ministers now. It's grown, right? But he calls me and says, you got to take over the ministry. And I'm like, dude, what did I tell you about? I'm just here for moral support, dude. And so by that time I've been preaching and so so this inmate comes to me. This guy's paralyzed from the neck down. He had been in some kind of, he had a stroke. He had been in some kind of violent stuff that went on in the prison or whatever. But he's constantly in his Bible. So he comes to me, he says, hey, Pastor Kelly. And I said, what's up, man? He says, the Lord told me to show you this. And so he gives me the Bible, and it's Psalm 75. Psalm 75 says, sometime God takes one down to bring another one up, right? Okay, fine. And so there's this other guy who is an official of a church system that's out here, Church of God in Christ, and I won't say what he is, remain his anonymity, but he comes to me and says, hey, Pastor Kelly, the Lord told me to tell you that this is your ministry now. So this is twice that I've been told that, right? I already been told that by the guy, right? Amen, look, I need you. So this is that 3-time thing. So what happens is, so we got 7 or 8 guys on Wednesdays, and we got 9 or 10 guys on Sundays. 7 goes to 20, 20 goes to 30, 30 goes to 40, 40 goes to 55, and the capacity for the room has to be cut off then. So now I got 2 services on Wednesdays. Then with Sundays, we say, okay, we go from 9, we go to 10, we go to 20, da-da-da-da-da. They opened up the chapel on the E-Yard, so the E-Yard chapel holds 200 guys. So now I got 375 guys coming to church on Sundays there at the prison, and I'm in charge. We got other ministers. Those other ministers stopped coming. Pastor Tillis remains, so I sent him out to the E-Yard. He's got the chapel out there. I take care of, I've got 3 services over here on Sundays. Now God is evolving me into this area. I didn't volunteer. Like, I didn't volunteer to get clean. God chose me. Just like he chose me for that. Just like he chose me to be here for men like you. He chose me to be there. So I have to, and even the Bible says many are called, but few are chosen, right? Why is it few are chosen? Because few choose to be chosen. I'm stepping into what God wants me to do. I'm all in. Let's do this thing. I'm excited about it, right? Come on, man. God, show me what you want me to do, man. What you want me to do next? That's exciting. How much success can we have? How can you take me being in the military and them telling me I drink too much, and then they turn around and buy me my home? Right? How do they do that? How do I find out that I have some disabilities? Some people can't admit when they got some problems, or whatever the case may be, and I can admit that I got some problems or whatever. Now, because of my disability, mentally, physically, or whatever you want to call it, that happened in the military, now I'm being taken care of. What? You just finished smoking crack on the streets, and God, the military takes care of you? Yes. You asked me how's my recovery now? Yes, you take care of me. Thank you so very much. My medical, right, is taken care of. I have a loving wife, and she's in the industry, in the medical industry. She takes care of things, but I need to be able to contribute my part. Well, there's some places I come up short, EJ.
We all do.
And I have to admit that to myself to be able to get free from it, man. And that's what somebody needs to hear today. The admittance is the battle, man. Just me being able to say, look, man, I'm a little crazy. My elevator don't go to the top floor. My sponsor says, I'm a few flapjacks short of a Happy Meal, So, and it's so crazy. The problem with crazy people is they don't know they're crazy. Right. At least I know that I come up short. Somebody said, well, you could be a little retarded. And I'm like, well, my dad was 70 years old. You never know. But it's okay. Retarded works. Right? Because I've been able to accomplish a lot of things in my life, and I do a lot of work with guys that are coming out of prison or whatever. I do a lot of stuff with a lot of people who actually are trying to change their lives, including me. Right. I do well at it. I'm good at what I do. So anyway.
So before we close it out, what would you tell somebody that might have been listening to this, right? That might be out there and they might be struggling. What bit of encouragement or advice or where to go or anything, what would you tell somebody that reaches out for Willie that doesn't know where to go?
Well, the it's not necessarily knowing where to go, because everyone that's out there knows there's some help somewhere. I knew it. There's somebody that's in their lives or somewhere in their circle of travel that has that beacon of light that's connected with them. If it's that aunt or that grandmother or Uncle Johnny, somebody's there that has always been there. They may not have their hands in what I'm doing, but they've always been there. Somebody's there. God has already given you somebody. There's always someone that God has dispatched. My aunt has never drank. She's never smoked. She was administrator for a university, right? She did all the hiring. She was the provost and all that kind of stuff. But she's never taken part in anything. But she was always there. That beacon of light. So someone that's actually looking for look around. Somebody's there. There's some help. And it ain't on the way. It's already waiting for you. My old problem is that I wasn't ready.
Right.
Was that the old saying, the adage is that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear? I was ready. God already had it set up. So anybody that's out there, all you got to do is just say something as simple as help. They'll show up.
Right.
Just help. Sometimes that's all I can say is, God, help. Help me, man. So anybody that's out there watching this and you really want to know what to do, just scream, help! Help! Somebody do something. Let's go up to somebody on the street, go up to a policeman and say, look, man, I need some help. If that's who's near you right now, you might be scared of the police, but they ain't scared of you. There's times where I just gotta reach out. I thank the police for whooping me and putting me in jail a couple of times. Because if they hadn't, I wouldn't be where I am today, man. Everything happens for a reason. So if there's somebody out there today, somebody's there. You know this. You walk up in some place, walk up in a store or wherever the case, and say, look, man, you know I get some help. There's somebody there that's gonna be able to do something for you. You'll be drawn to them, because I was. So anyway, yeah.
Perfect. I think we did it all. We always close this out. You owe me a hug, Willie, and that's it.
Okay, I can do that. If you can walk.
Oh, thank you so much.
No problem, man. No problem.
Appreciate you.